It's clear that, and it goes without saying, that the United Nations has been following the recent escalation in the region, and also the escalation that we've seen in the Red Sea, with an increasing level of concern. And that concern is multifaceted. It goes in different levels. On one end, there's the clear military and the political dimension of that escalation that is a source of concern from our end. But there is obviously also the other aspect that you just highlighted, and that is the threat that it implies for the freedom of navigation, and also the consequences for the environment when we see ships being sunk, as we have seen with the Rubemar. So with that, from that perspective, I spent a large part of yesterday in close touch with the resident coordinator of the United Nations to Yemen, Julien, and discussed about the efforts from the United Nations in order to assess the effects that the sinkage of the ship will have, may have on the Red Sea. In that sense, 5 experts will be traveling to Yemen within 48 hours from our United Nations Environmental Program, and will, in close relation with the Minister of Environment in Yemen, initiate some of the assessment on the consequences that the sinkage of the Rubemar will have on the Red Sea. I firmly believe that the roadmap that we are engaging with the parties on not only has the possibility to be reached, it is a must for the parties to come to that level of understanding in order to make use of the progress that we've seen so far, and take Yemen towards the more important steps that needs to be taken, one that leads to a serious ceasefire and one that leads to a political process. So from that point of view, I don't only think that it's possible, I think it's absolutely necessary. It's clear, however, as you highlighted, that the mediation environment has become more complicated given the recent development in the region. And that is something that anyone that follows the development in the Middle East will understand. But it's not an issue that I believe is an obstacle that is impossible to overcome. I believe that we definitely have a possibility to do so, and more importantly, and I think that this is something that the Yemenis themselves will understand very well, more importantly, the needs for Yemen remain the same with or without the current escalation in the region. The needs of the Yemenis when it comes to the need for the payment of salaries remain. There is also a need for roads in Yemen to open, and there is a need for Yemenis to be able to travel inside and outside of Yemen, and there is a need for a ceasefire to be established so that Yemenis can live with a guarantee that the war is not coming back. And finally, there is also a need for the political process to resume, so that the Yemenis can start defining their future by themselves. So these priorities that I just highlighted remain my priority, remain the priority of the United Nations. And that is something that I will concentrate myself on with or without the current escalation that we're seeing. And that remains the firm priority of the work of the United Nations. It's an important question, and it's a question that we have been following with concern, and a question that we're following with a great level of priority. In all circumstances such as this one, the first priority is to assess the impact that such a designation will have on the ability of the United Nations to deliver humanitarian aid. That's the first priority. And here you will have listened to my colleagues from OCHA in the Security Council briefing in February, outlining their views on this matter, and they remain in close touch with the United States to ensure that the United Nations receive the necessary licenses to be able to carry out and to continue to assist with the humanitarian support to Yemen. But you also highlight in your question, you also highlight a broader question, and that is the overall question related to the economy. Now, it's an important one, because in situations such as the one that we see right now in Yemen, there is always a concern that a designation might have a chilling effect on the economy as a whole. And that is a question that we follow closely. And that brings me to just, if you may, underline the centrality of the economy in a situation such as the one that we see in Yemen. And that is a question that I have been focusing on and underlining on numerous occasions. And it's an issue where I think has a potential of delivering real, tangible results for the Yemenis themselves if it is well managed within the context of the mediation efforts that we're engaging with the parties themselves on. And that is also a reason why we have integrated the economy as part of the tracks that we want to see being achieved in the roadmap, and what I am engaging on right now with the parties themselves is preparing for the creation of a joint economic committee where matters related to the integration of the Yemeni economy can be addressed. But clearly we need to take not all steps at once. We need to take one step at a time in order to achieve tangible results, but also with a great sense of urgency in order to address the challenges that the Yemenis are facing on a daily basis. I don't think that we can come away from the realization that the destabilization and the situation, the current situation in the Middle East, is generating a broader, complicating environment for mediated solutions. Because, and I think that one of the most important reasons is that the priority of the world and of the international community becomes one that is immediate, and that is related to the current escalation. And that is a complicating factor and a factor that we need to address. But it doesn't take away, and I said that earlier, it doesn't take away, it doesn't negate the long-term trajectory that we're engaging on when it comes to Yemen. It doesn't mean that the efforts that we have been engaging on are the wrong ones. On the contrary, it just underlines the necessity and the urgency for us to make progress on reaching tangible results and reaching a breakthrough when it comes to the mediation related to the roadmap and on all the related elements that needs to be achieved in that end. Yes, I think that the fact that the current development in the Middle East has generated different approaches and a different point of views among several of its member states is nothing out of the ordinary. And it's clearly a matter of concern for those who follow the question, but it's also a question. But it's also an issue that I believe is we will be able to overcome. And the reason for that belief is, again, going back to Yemen. And the reason for that belief, going back to Yemen, is that the international community, when it comes to the long-term trajectory of Yemen, hasn't moved. They are still united. There is no difference in terms of approach when it comes to the long-term trajectory of where Yemen should go. And that is a just peace for the sake of the Yemenis, a sustainable and just peace for the sake of the Yemenis, that is achieved through negotiations under the auspices of the United Nations. And here, wherever, regardless whether I travel to Washington, whether I travel to Moscow, or if I go to Beijing or to London or to Paris, I will receive the same level of support for that long-term trajectory. So the belief and the hope that I take with me in the efforts that I am engaging on and that the United Nations is engaging on is on the strong support that we're receiving from the international community on the long-term efforts that we're engaging when it comes to Yemen as such. The role of Saudi Arabia, and I want to add also the role of Oman in support of the efforts of the United Nations, of the mediation efforts of the United Nations these last years, has been critical. And this being the bordering countries to Yemen, I expect nothing less that these countries remain as supportive as possible for the positive development on the mediation efforts in Yemen. And that becomes even more important in a situation if we reach a breakthrough on the roadmap and we move into the implementation. The support that I need from the region and the support that I will need from the Yemen's neighbors from Saudi Arabia and from Oman will remain as critical as ever. When I mentioned earlier that I am in need of support of the region, I also want to enlarge that concept of the region, and I don't want to exclude anyone. And in that sense, you will have seen me since the beginning of my tenure establishing a firm and an open and a trustworthy line of communication with Iran when it comes to settling the conflict in Yemen. I have visited Tehran on numerous occasions. I was there around 3 weeks ago. I had long and important discussions with the foreign minister where we discussed not only broader concerns about the overall escalation in the region, but also the need for concerted support of the United Nations mediation efforts to reach a peaceful settlement of the conflict in Yemen. And those discussions will need to continue. And they will need to continue regardless of the state of play in the region, because that is the role of the United Nations. We keep channels of communications open and we will look for support where we can get it. And I will expect continued constructive engagement with the Iranians on this issue, and that is something that I will look forward to. It's a very important question, the one that you ask here, and I think that it's critical for everyone to understand that and to realize that Yemen should not be and cannot be seen as a footnote in a broader regional context. Yemen is an absolute magnificent country with 30 million Yemenis who have been suffering for way too long, and they need and they deserve a chance to adjust peace. And that is a priority that will remain to the core of my engagement. Here, I think it's dangerous if you start conditionalizing those efforts with a broader development in the region. And that is something that I will want to avoid to the greatest extent possible. But similarly, I think that if we, for example, reach progress on the mediation efforts that we're seeing in Yemen and generate some form and some stability and sustainable stability in Yemen, I'm certain that this will have a positive impact on the region as a whole. And likewise, if the region generates more stability, that can have a positive effect on the mediation that we're having in Yemen. But the interlinkage and the conditionality is something that I want to avoid, and that's why I, from my end, will remain focused on Yemen and making sure that the Yemenis themselves can define their own future.